talking Reds, good centers. Got me on the mic, now let's spill the tea. Talking courtside dreams from history. Legends on the blacktop now and then. From Will to Steph, we hit it again. Both better chimes in, let's go deep. Young blood's rising, can't skip a beat. Puppy prospects with fire in their eyes. Draft night suckers and hoop dream highs. Wire to wire, bring the heat. Podcast magic can't be beat. Do better, but roll better. We're hoop heads, trendsetters.
What is poppin', y'all? It is your boy, it is Guard-E3, and welcome to the 48th episode of the N1 podcast. We're only 2 away from 50, which is crazy to think about. Of course, like every week, joining me at this time, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest co-host of all time, he is Mo Better. How are you, Mo?
I'm doing great. It's been an amazing, insane, busy trade deadline. Can't wait to get into this.
No, absolutely. But you know how it is, Mo. First, we're gonna start how we always do. Underrated player of the week. So, Mo, why don't you start us off and give us your underrated player of the week? It could also be a person, team, just anything that you think is underrated about basketball. If anybody's just tuning in for the first time.
My underrated player in the NBA this week is a GM. I'm going to go with the GM of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Mike Gansey. The team that he's put together, if you look at what Cleveland did last year, how their season ended in the playoffs, rather than making a big move or turning the team over, they opted for continuity, brought back the core, added a couple of role players, and Cleveland's had the best record in the Eastern Conference throughout the season. And now, at the trade deadline, he goes out and he gets an elite two-way player in DeAndre Hunter, which is a perfect fit for what Cleveland needs should they match up against the Celtics or the Bucks. I think Mike Gansey is a prime example of front office stability and showing patience and not making the quick move, but waiting for the smart move. So that's my person of the week in the NBA, Cavaliers GM Mike Gansey.
You know what's funny, actually? Because Mo and I didn't actually never plan our underrated players of the week before this. We literally just come on the show and do it. But my underrated player of the week was actually just straight up competent front offices and good GMs. Like, that is almost the greatest weapon in any dynasty. You can talk about players and coaches, and they had to get there somehow. You needed somebody behind the scenes making shrewd moves. But when you don't have a good front office, you know what happens. You get stuff like some of the stuff that we saw this weekend. And I want to start with the obvious one, because when we talk about trades, I just want to talk about the trades. But let's talk a little GM work real quick. And let's start off with somebody who will never be able to show their face in Dallas ever again. Of course, I'm talking about Nico Harrison. Kyle says if you get incompetent GM work, you get the Hawks. That's fair enough. There's a couple of There's a couple of terrible GM works. I'm going to discuss 3 teams specifically, because I think 3 teams really just kind of blew it. But let's start with the biggest and obvious one. Nico Harrison, you are the most hated man in Dallas. And that town has Jerry Jones. You don't understand how impressive of a feat that is to be more hated than Jerry Jones. You saw the most insane thing. Like, people were walking up with an actual casket holding a funeral at the Dirk statue. They made it seem like this is the worst thing to happen in Dallas. And we've had, presidents get their heads blown off in Dallas. We've had Jerry Jones in Dallas. Like, we've had Rajon Rondo playing point guard for Dallas, but this one had everybody feeling all type of way, and I get it. 25-year-old Luka Doncic gets traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. in the most shocking trade in NBA history. I don't think you can think of any trade that can top the shock value that this one had. I I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, Mo, because at this time, I kind of want to go through the process of the trade because he said some mind boggling things too. And why don't we start with the one? First off, we all know the first mistake he made. He only negotiated with the Lakers. Oh my gosh, there's absolutely no way. When you have a 25-year-old prospect that you're trying to move, you know what you do? You let everybody know he's out there. Yes, you might exert his power and try to pick where he wants to go, but you're still going to have teams offering Luka 25. Here's 8 firsts.
Right.
First, I'm not even kidding you. I think Luka would have gotten 8 to 9 first on the open market because I feel like 6 or 7 was my first number. Actually, I now think he would have gotten more. It's insane. And the fact that you call the Rob Pelinka, and Rob Pelinka thought you were kidding. And not only did he negotiate this trade, this is my favorite part, Mo. He talked you down. At first, it was multiple first. Dalton Connect. How does this happen? Did Rob just counter with, yeah, no, Luka's fat. He's an alcoholic. You just told me that. I ain't giving him multiple firsts and Dalton. And, Rob like, yeah, you're right. This is a 25-year-old generational talent. You're giving up the best player now and somebody who could arguably be the best player in the league if he's not already there. And you let Rob Pelinka talk you down in the negotiation. That is the most insane thing to me, Mo. I don't even know what to do with that.
I don't even know if it was negotiations though, right? Like you're the one that's moving Luka, but you negotiated like Pelinka was doing you a favor. Like you were he was in a position of power and he wasn't. And look, again, Anthony Davis is an amazing player. He's going to walk into the Hall of Fame, but where he's at in his career, where Luka's at in his career, and what Luka's already proven he could be, you don't hesitate to go, if you're serious, we can get that done before lunch. Like you don't hesitate because you want to make sure Nico doesn't change his mind and realize how stupid he's being. I've thought about this trade a lot. And the initial reactions from a lot of people and some of the pundits are that, and even I initially thought, if you think about it, right now today, Dallas is set up to be a title contender. But really, when I thought about it some more, Brett, as I thought about it, yeah, what they have is they've got AD, who's terrific on both ends of the floor. They've got Gafford. They'll get Lively back eventually, and they'll have a incredible 3-headed monster in terms of their big rotation. But look at the Mavericks overall. They have one guy that you can say on the perimeter is a shot creator. That's Kyrie. Who else on that team is going to be a big time playmaker? Who's on that team? Who's going to create when Kyrie's off the floor? Who can create in a 7-game series when defense is locked down? It's about half-court execution, and you got to make something out of nothing. The Mavs don't have a lot of shot creators. And I may be wrong. You might have the standings right in front of you. They're either a game over 500 or a game below 500. Upon further review, I actually disagree. I don't think they're better than the Lakers. I don't think they're better than the Lakers at all. Anthony Davis is amazing, but if you don't have any perimeter players that can really complement him outside of Kyrie, why would Dallas be the better team versus a team that has LeBron and Luka? I don't think they're better than the Lakers. I look at the Western Conference, Brett. There's OKC. There's Houston, right? But there are no dominant. Like OKC is the runaway favorite, but I don't think the Rockets are a dominant team. I think they're talented. They're certainly deep, and I would argue they might be the most athletic team in the league. But Minnesota's incomplete. They're not a title contender. They've regressed. The Spurs have made a monstrous move that might get them into the postseason, but they're not title contenders. Not yet. Not yet. I honestly don't know how good the Dallas Mavericks are going to be going forward. The initial reaction from most of us was they'll be better in the short term. I don't think that's a certainty at all. The Lakers have 2 top 10 players. The Mavericks don't. Why? The Lakers still have Austin Reeves. Who do the Mavericks have outside of Kyrie that can create for others? The Lakers have LeBron. They have Luka. Even Austin Reeves can be a secondary playmaker off the dribble. I think this is one of the worst. Not one of the worst. This is the worst trade. And I'm a Laker fan. Don't get me wrong. I'm grateful. I am totally grateful for Nico Harrison being as incompetent as he is. But it's the worst trade in NBA history. And there's nothing close to this. It's that bad. And I'm reversing my initial reaction. No, the Mavericks aren't better than the Lakers.
And there's like some level of copium with like Nico Harrison and some Mavericks fans, right? And listen, I even rock my Dallas jersey for this. The Dallas Mavericks are my second favorite team. So between being a Dallas fan and a Bucks fan at this trade deadline, I've been through it all at this point. And I get told short term they're a contender. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
Let me give you a scenario. I blitz Kyrie on the perimeter in the playoffs.
Yep.
What happens? I heard, oh well, it's going to give it to AD. Okay, is AD really some elite passer? No. He's gonna catch it, turn, face up, look for his own offense. By the time that happens, the play resets, and you have gained 0 advantages. Am I supposed to be sold on? Well, Spencer Dinwiddie's the answer. I promise you, he's not.
Right? Yeah. I'm with you. No, keep preach. Keep talking.
And I want to show you guys too. Before we get into the other bad aspects of this press conference, I need to show you too why this was also a terrible trade. Let me pull this up real quick. This is the draft picks for the Dallas Mavericks. What do we have here? Okay, so these are their outgoing draft picks. So they have their 2026 first. Oh, look at that. Technically they have a 2027 first, but that's protected, and I highly doubt that that's going to convey. If it has to be a top 2 pick, so you know what? Whatever. Look at this. This is where this gets fun, because mind you, this is by the time Kyrie leaves, because when Kyrie's asked to be the leader or option number 1 and the pressure mounts, he bails. He's out of there. So Kyrie's gone after next year. You have a year and a half to contend before he's out of there. And now you have Anthony Davis and whoever else you throw around him. Oh, 2028. Oh, OKC pick swap. Okay, you just handed OKC another lottery pick. Okay, you know what? Maybe they're 2029. So, that's going to Houston. You know what? It gets better. You can start building a 2030 Actually, that's going to San Antonio. Never mind. You were being delusional in giving up your future to contend now when you're not a contender now. I promise you they're not making it out of the West. I'm not confident they're making it out of the second round, maybe not even the first round, unless they get a really favorable matchup. You took the best player, a top 3 player in the league, off of a team that was already just barely above 500 and treading water. And you think that that's going to make you a title contender? Listen, I think the Mavericks now, I think they'll be like a top 10 defense in the league. They'll be a really good defensive unit. The problem is that this offense is going to bottom out hard. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. Tread it, run from it. Destiny arrives all the same.
I agree with you 1,000%. They're going to be really good defensively, and I know Nico Harrison used that line in the press conference. Defense wins championships. In the NBA, defense wins championships, but you also have to have guys on the other side offensively that can close out tight games. Kyrie's terrific, but you're right. If you blitz him and you hedge on AD, who's the next option after he and AD? You're going to say, well, PJ Washington, he'll drop 20 or 25. He hasn't shown he could ever do that consistently in his career. It's funny that everybody had that initial reaction because we didn't think it through. But if you really think it through, how are the Mavericks in a better position than the Lakers are in the short term? Because Nico Harrison let Rob Pelinka fleece him, the Lakers were able to hold on to the pick and Dalton Connect and move Dalton Connect in the pick, and they got themselves a rim-running athletic big to complement Luka and LeBron, which both of them are excellent at playing with athletic bigs. That's all on Nico Harrison. You can try to sell your fan base those Wolf tickets, and I'm not downgrading what Anthony Davis can do or what Kyrie can do, but you brought up a very good point. Whenever Kyrie's been in a position where he had to be the number one or a pseudo number two guy, at least be like a leader, that's not his strength. Kyrie's a hooper, but he's not a leader. I don't know what he's going to do in this new role because they're assuming that he and AD are going to click. What I'm assuming is they're still got to climb their way out of the play-in. Like, they're not even in the play-in yet. They have to climb their way past that and get to the 6th spot. Brett, I don't think it's a lock that they make the playoffs.
And and it's funny that this is one that I knew right away was terrible. That's why, ironically, when Mo was making TikToks about it, under every single one, I put the Mavs are stupid for this. There's no way. And it's bad when the owner laughed at you at first. You brought up the idea, and the owner laughed. And the worst part about, and the last 2 points I want to touch on, because to me these are almost most damning, and these should have gotten him fired right away. Luka did not indicate he wouldn't resign. So it's not like this was a situation where, well, maybe he wants out, and maybe there's something behind the scenes we don't know. Maybe Luka's just kind of posturing, but both sides now have said he ain't give any indication he wanted out. So unless they're just protecting Luka, which I don't know why they would do that at this point, that's wild to me. But Mo, this is almost the most damning thing he said. Out of everything that he said, why did he accept Anthony Davis and a first and Max Christie? To sum it up, he doesn't care about the next 10 years because he won't be there. Doesn't care about the next 10. He ain't going to be there. He'll be there for 2 or 3.
I heard him say that. He said in 10 years, me and Jay Kidd, we won't be here in 10 years. And Jay Kidd looked at him like, idiot.
Jay Kidd's looking at him like, can you stop mentioning me, please? Why am I even here? And I felt so bad for Jay Kidd in that press conference because 13 minutes in, Jay Kidd just bailed. I mean, not Jay Kidd. He just bails. He's like, okay, guys, I'm out of here. And then Nico leaves, and now Jay Kidd's just like, so does anybody want to ask about the game? Right. I felt so bad for Jason Kidd.
It was an awkward press conference. It was a kind of a PR/hit move. Lucas, he weighs 270. It's not true that he didn't want to stay in Dallas. This literally, look, it is about money. The new ownership group didn't want to go to the second apron. They did not want to invest $345 million in Luka. They thought paying Anthony Davis the $174 million that he's owed is a better move for them. And financially, it is. It's a better move. But ultimately, you're trying to win titles. Again, I'm a huge Anthony Davis fan. I am. I don't think the Mavericks are better today than they were a week ago. They're not. And that's not a knock against Anthony Davis. It's just a reality of the situation. Anthony Davis, when he was the number one option, when he was with the Pelicans, he was good. He got them to the playoffs a couple of times, but Anthony Davis isn't the kind of guy that if he's your best player, he's going to lead you to a title. He's not that guy. He's the secondary guy. He's the star beside the star. And I think Kyrie's the same thing. So if you've got two guys who are both proven and terrific at being number twos, that's great. The problem is on this team, one of them is going to have to assert themselves and prove that they can be a number one. And I don't think there's enough surrounding talent around them that Dallas is going to go on this. Now, you're right. They could get a favorable matchup. Maybe the Timberwolves make the playoffs and they match up against them because this current version of the Timberwolves is a lesser version of what they were last year overall to me. I don't want to get into Julius Randle, but I just think they would have to get that kind of matchup. It's kind of ridiculous though when you really think about it. When people go like, the Lakers won because the Lakers won the future. I even thought that initially, and then when I really thought about it, I look at the Lakers roster. Not to mention the move that they made recently. The Lakers have better talent than the Mavericks do. Why is this even a conversation?
Yeah, and that's kind of the funny thing too. And by the way, that defense wins championship quote. The Mavericks were 12th in defense last year. Like, they were top half of the league, and mind you, they got off to a horrid start last year on the defensive end. Like, I think they were like very low 20s at the start of the year. They were awful, but throughout the year, they ramped it up, and by the time they got to the playoffs, they're actually a very good defense. And no, losing to the Celtics does not change that.
No, not at all.
But say Nico woke up, thought he saw Oliver Miller walk through the door. Yeah, it's just so weird that he's saying all these things, and then it just, at the end of the day, none of them make any sense. That's kind of the issue, right? If
he also talked about culture too, Brett. Remember that?
Yeah. And I feel like if he would have came out and was honest about everything, he still hated, to the end of time. But that would have been preferable. Now there's, defense wins championships. Luka's fat and out of shape. All right, Scott Steiner, calm down about calling him fat, because Luka's always comes into a regular season. I'll admit, he comes into the season normally, a little heavier. He likes to have fun during the offseason. But the way I always saw it, Mo, is he kind of almost has that Shaq workout plan. Where, okay, you can come into the season heavier, and then throughout the season, you'll just ramp it up, get into much better shape. By the time the playoffs roll around, you're ready to go. And to me, that's perfectly acceptable as long as you perform. And Luka Doncic is one of the greatest playoff performers that we've ever seen. So, again, this bothers me because I would have been so much happier if Nico didn't just completely lie out of his ass the entire time. Just, at this point, be honest. Hey, yeah, we traded him because we wanted to stay under the second apron.
Right.
And I don't want to look incompetent, so I wanted to bring back a player that can still help us win now. The longer it went on, the worse it got. So I don't want to hear any real defense of Nico, because to me, this is indefensible. He should be fired for this. That's how bad it was. Ownership should have to sell the team, and they should all be exported to Guatemala. Send them to Guantanamo Bay, because they should be jailed for how bad this was.
I think your fan base's reaction is what should be telling you how you should feel, right? Even avid Dallas Mavericks fans, Brett, are you're not selling me that we get the better deal, right? You're not trying to say that we fleeced the Lakers. Yeah, we got back Anthony Davis. Come on, think about it. We got back AD's a two-way play, which is true. It's a horrible selling point because there are a lot of great two-way players, and there's some guys who aren't great two-way players, but they're so dominant, so amazing offensively, it offsets anything the average two-way player can do. I look, again, as a Laker fan, all I can say is thanks, Nico. Appreciate you, man. I'll send you a card. I love your work. But as a fan of the game, come on, man. Just keep just keep it 100. Say I got my marching orders from ownership, and we needed to find a way to stay under the second apron. They didn't feel comfortable paying Luka $345 million, and and he could have left it at that, but they had to go into, well, the guy weighs like 270. He's not really committed to the franchise. I'm not arguing that Luka could be in better condition, but I think you hit it on the head. He's always, since he's been in the league, kind of done the Shaq thing. He's just come in maybe a little out of shape, and then throughout the season, by the All-Star break, he looks like peak Luka, and then going into the playoffs, he looks like the elite player that he's always been. You could have been honest, and the fan base would have been like, damn it, that's messed up. We're upset, but we understand, Nico, you had to make this happen. But they went another way, and they tried to sell their fan base on, we're better right now than the Lakers. Like, we don't care about what we're going to look like in 10 years. The next 3 years, though, we're going to compete for titles. I'm looking at the Rockets. I'm looking at the Grizzlies. I'm looking at the Thunder, and I'm looking at the Lakers. And I don't think the Mavericks are better than none of those teams. And honestly, even though I think they're not as deep as they've been in the past, I don't think the Mavericks can beat the Nuggets in a series.
No, they won't. That'll be interesting, but why don't we move on to GM number 2, Mo, that I think really messed up. Phoenix Suns, come on down. You are in the hot seat. Because what did you do? We all know it's not a secret, Mo. They wanted Jimmy Butler oh so badly, but they couldn't find a taker for Bradley Beal. It's now reported that Bradley Beal wanted to go somewhere where it was warm if you traded him, except everywhere that it was warm apparently didn't want him. So what do? You try to trade Kevin Durant. And now guess what you have successfully done?
Upset Kevin
pissed
Durant
off the locker room.
Right.
Beal knows he's not welcome there. Durant's probably not very happy that, I know he would never probably admit it, but, there's reports that he's not very happy. He was included in trade talks, and I wouldn't be either. You nuked your team chemistry. If you were going to fancy him so hard and be so desperate you started offering Durant, you better get the job done. Because once you go down this road, your team chemistry's cooked.
What's that locker room look like?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Durant's like, you guys tried to send me to the Warriors. And by the way, just as a personal opinion, why would Kevin Durant not want to go to the I get it. I think the way Kevin Durant thinks, I'm just trying to get in his head for a minute. If I go back to the Warriors and we go on a deep run, maybe even get to another finals, they're going to say, I can see the pundits and the trolls saying he needed to play with Steph and Draymond again. Right. And we know KD's ultra sensitive, but here's the thing. When you won with Golden State, whether you were the most beloved player or not, whether you were the leader of the locker room or not, anybody that knew basketball absolutely knew you were the best player on the team. If you made a run again with them and you guys won another title, I'm pretty sure you would be the best player on the team again. I would like your chances with Steph and Draymond a lot. And I love Devin Booker, but I've never been a Bradley Beal fan, and I don't like the rest of your roster construction. I don't even know that the Suns make the playoffs, and I'm not being funny. I'm being realistic. They're one of the teams, even though they have more star power, I don't think they're better than the Mavericks.
I think they'll make it, and I feel like they'll get hot at the right time because at the end of the day, Booker and Durant are still absolutely insane talents. And then they'll somehow get the hype machine behind them, and then it's just going to be like, oh, well, they made the playoffs, but they lost in 5. So what are we really doing here?
And Kyle made a great point. Bill he's already in a warm place. He's in Phoenix. Right.
Yeah. Beal better get in golf cart and settle in with the retirees. No, that's fair. And that's almost kind of the thing, right? you've also opened the door now. What does your future look like? What does next year look like? Does Kevin Durant really now want to stay? Maybe he's like, yo, you didn't want me, and now I don't want to be here. I want out.
But
Okay, well, if Kevin Durant wants out, does Devin Booker really want to stay with just Bradley Beal and whatever is left of the roster? Like, if you destroy team chemistry to such an extent, we could see the destruction of the Phoenix Suns as early as next offseason.
and look, Book is still your centerpiece, I believe. Even though Durant's been the greater player, Book is your centerpiece. Because Book is, I think he's around 28 years old. So Book is still in his prime. But realistically, let's keep it real. Durant's 36. If you're Phoenix, why wouldn't you propose the idea of moving him? If you thought right now today, are we going to win a title this year with 36-year-old Kevin Durant? No, you ain't winning no title. You're not sniffing the finals unless you buy tickets. You're not going to the finals. Are you going to be that much better with 37-year-old Kevin Durant next season? No, you're not winning anything. This isn't a knock on KD. This is just the reality of where he is in his career. I look, maybe he's to the point where he's like, I've kind of bounced around a little bit. I don't want to change uniforms no more. Maybe it's that. But now you're going to think about it because the Suns tried to trade you. How can you not be bothered by that? What I don't understand is if he's all about winning realistically, because Kevin Durant's supposed to be a really smart guy, knows the game. Look at your team. Look at your roster construction. Y'all not winning no title. You're not winning no title next year either. You're going to be a year older. As you get older, you actually need more help. I don't see why Phoenix didn't go ahead and try to move him anyway. He didn't have to be happy about it, but it would have benefited them. Trying to move him at age 37, his value is going to be lessened even more. I look at the Suns and I see a franchise that's in complete disarray. They have no direction.
And yeah, and the fact that they thought the move was to trade like 35-year-old Kevin Durant for 35-year-old Jimmy Butler, like, does that bring you closer to title contention?
Right.
And I think we're in the situation that the Phoenix Suns just they're kind of screwed because I feel like, D-Book seems to love playing with Durant. Durant's still right there, top 10 player in the league conversations. Like, I think if you lose Durant, I really think you lose Booker.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bigger issue as to shopping Durant and making him unhappy. It's not necessarily losing KD because he is 36. Go get a haul. I respect KD, and I think he can still contribute to winning. It's just not going to be in Phoenix. But now, Devin Booker's not a spring chicken anymore. He's in his prime. He's not going to look at this roster with, $50 million a year man Beal, and, young but talented guys like Ryan Dunn's talented. But are you really staying in Phoenix going like, yeah, me and Ryan Dunn, we're going all the way next year? No, that's not going to happen. So me and Nick Richards, like,
yeah,
I think angering Katie just kind of started the timer. And I think it blows up this offseason. And if KD wants out, I think very shortly after that, you're going to see Booker out too.
We talk about competent GMs who make smart moves, who are a little bit more patient and less impulsive. James Jones had done a good job, but the last couple of seasons, I think he's gone more for the big name, the shine versus the substance, and all the moves that he's made, it's cost him. It's weird because Phoenix has literally replicated the failure that KD, Harden, and Kyrie did in Brooklyn. He replicated it with KD, Booker, and Beal. It's the same failure. It might be worse, but they're not going to sniff. They're not going to, never mind a finals. They're not going to play in a conference finals. That threesome, and they have no picks anytime soon. It is a horrible job by their front office. And look, he does get his marching orders from a young owner who wants to make big splash moves. I always tell people I'm all for the big move if you win a title. You don't have to win 3 or 4 of them, but if you can win one to justify the move, you're golden. They're not going to win a title. They're not going to come close to winning a title. And I feel like, how does Kevin Durant's career not get a little bit more diminished as we go forward and he ends up changing uniforms again?
Yeah, I think it's coming. I think it's unfortunate that, people are going to use it to diminish KD because he's just such a hell of a talent. But Mo, why don't I bring up the last GM that I want to discuss, and then when we talk about these trades, we'll talk about them from a strictly basketball standpoint.
Sure.
John Horst of the Milwaukee Bucks.
I knew that was coming.
Step on down, because quite frankly, you should be fired right now. I want that notification. I never advocate for anybody to get fired, but John Horst, you better update that Indeed profile, buddy. Your days in Milwaukee should be numbered. And before people think, oh, he's just overreacting to the Chris Middleton trade, I'm not overreacting to just the Chris Middleton trade, right? I just think he did a terrible job in general. You traded Chris Middleton for a clearly inferior player in Kyle Kuzma. The only benefit to that is we get under the second apron, and I guess Kuzma's younger with a de-escalating salary. So he's younger and cheaper. Okay, whatever. I'm not happy about it. I think that made us worse. But and then you double down on this, by the way. We trade Marjon Beauchamp for Kevin Porter Jr. So we lose Chris Middleton, franchise icon, franchise legend. Not only did we lose him, we drafted AJ Johnson 7 months ago. We punted our first round pick. And the best we could do was Kyle Kuzma. I can't even say Patrick Baldwin because he got sent to the Spurs. We did get Jericho Sims, which that's the one part of this deal I do like. But Kevin Porter Jr., first off, Kevin Porter Jr. shouldn't even be in the league. The man's a hothead, and he stinks. And I know, I get it. Well, I mean, he occasionally has a 30-point game. Yeah, sandwich in between like 2 of 10 from the field games with the worst defense you've ever seen. It was a terrible, terrible trade. I do not want Kevin Porter Jr. anywhere near my basketball team. The man sucks. And I get it. Beauchamp wasn't doing anything, but I would have rather had Beauchamp sitting on the bench than Kevin Porter Jr. because I think his impact's only going to be negative. And I get it. People are like, well, Chris is old. He's broken down. Last year, Chris was the best player in a playoff series that featured Tyrese Halliburton. At least if you want to argue he wasn't, you can't deny that he was in the conversation. Kyle Kuzma has never been in the conversation of being the second best player on a good team. You can even argue that he wasn't even the third best player on the 2020 Lakers.
He wasn't.
Because he took turns with him and KCP. He stepped up.
Right.
But it was, KCP did a lot of the stepping up for the Lakers in 2020. Chris on one working ligament in his leg was still better than whatever Kyle Kuzma brings to the table. I don't want to hear, and I'm hearing this like cope from Bucks fans, and this is getting annoying real quick. Well, he's this great shooter, and he can rebound, he can play defense. One, he wasn't an efficient shooter in LA. He wasn't really that efficient. So I don't know where you're getting this efficient shooter crap from. Oh, okay, he does rebound better than Chris, I'll give you that. But defense? We're talking about Kyle Kuzma and defense? I haven't seen that man play defense since he was in LA. That was 5 years ago. And now it's supposed to be sold on. He's going to take like the last 4 years, throw him out the window, erase every single bad habit he has ever developed in Washington, and becomes this third option that we need? That stinks. It's not going to happen. Chris Middleton can elevate his game to a actual true third option that you need in the playoffs. Hell, we've seen him elevated to a point where when he's on, he looks like a second option. And he was even the first option as late as last year. Granted, Giannis was out, but that's okay. He still did great. Kyle Kuzma doesn't have that level. Kyle Kuzma, if he elevates his game, maybe he plays 2024 Chris Middleton? And it's not even just this trade deadline that why I want Horst gone. It's the mismanagement since we've won the title. Hey, we could have had Dante DiVincenzo. We'd rather have Serge Ibaka. Completely washed vet. Hey, Bojan and a lot of quality guys are traded for 3 second-round picks. Actually, never mind. We don't have that because we traded for Jay Crowder. Oh, but those first-round picks we do have, we get guys like Marjan Beauchamp. What are we doing? It's not just this. It's last year's free agency, last year's trade deadline, last year, the year before that, the one move he got right, the Dame trade. I will defend that. But everything else outside of that and getting Giannis to resign because of the Dame trade, absolute incompetence. This man stinks, and he needs to be out of there tomorrow. I'm done with John Horst. He should be fired. And I actually dislike him more than Nico Harrison at this point because what's going to happen right now is this season's going to go to absolute shit. And then Giannis that next year is going to be like, I told you I wanted a competitor. We are not a competitor. We are not a competitive basketball team. I want out. This man is going to get Giannis to leave town. And guess what? He only has himself to blame for just being the most incompetent piece of crap that I've ever seen in a front office. He is up there. He's lucky that the Luka Doncic trade stole all the headlines. Otherwise, the headline should say John Horst is a complete idiot and he should be out of here. He should be banned from every establishment in Milwaukee and he should be banned from the state of Wisconsin tomorrow.
So, God, I don't even know how to follow that, partner. Let me just take a measured approach this way. This is an opportunity for Kyle Kuzma to me to revive his career to some degree because when he was with the Wizards, he was just the second best player on a horrible team every year he was there. I will say this: does Kyle Kuzma have the potential to be an effective number 3? Yeah, I'll grant that. Is he younger, quicker than the current version of Chris Middleton? Yeah, obviously. So it's an opportunity. Now, in my gut, do I believe that this move moves the needle in the direction that the Bucks front office think it does? I don't think so. I don't think Kyle Kuzma is going to be able to handle the expectations because the Bucks are title contenders. So the expectations is you got to find a way to get through the gauntlet of Cleveland, Boston, and New York. Maybe even throw the Pacers in there and get to the NBA Finals. I don't think Kuzma's up for that challenge. I just don't. And so everything you said about the GM, I have no problem with it. You know much more about him than I do because it's more in your ballpark. But the move itself, because I do know Kyle Kuzma, I've seen him, watched him since he was a rookie. I think Kyle Kuzma on a really good team is a fourth option, and he's the fourth option that doesn't even shoot a lot. So I don't think this is the move that the Bucks needed to make. And I think you also said something that's very important and very smart. If and when this blows up, Giannis is going to be frustrated, like all great players are when they start getting towards 30, because they know the clock starts ticking. Giannis is going to get frustrated and go, I'm trying to win titles. And that's the move you come up with. And he's going to start whispering about maybe moving on to greener pastures. You don't want to be known as the guy that triggered Giannis Antetokounmpo to leave Milwaukee. You don't.
I'm not going to lie. I very much so almost blacked out during that last rant. I don't even remember half of what I said.
He said he's been unhappy.
Like,
on the Wizards.
Like, man, yeah, say so that yeah, Kyle Kuzma's been unhappy. Put him on a winning team, I think you get his best. Yeah, yes, but what the problem is, his best isn't good enough.
There it
That's
is.
the problem.
There it
The
is.
problem isn't necessarily because listen, I know I just ranted about Kyle Kuzma and John Horst. I want you to understand. I'm going to give Kyle Kuzma his fair shake.
Sure.
I'm not gonna, immediately throw Kyle Kuzma off a bridge because John Horst is a fucking moron. But my problem is real simple. Kyle Kuzma's best, I don't think, is good enough. I think he'll be good, but when we asked Chris to elevate his game, he was great when we needed to. I think Kyle Kuzma can be good. I don't think he can elevate his game to great if called upon because they're gonna take out Dame. They're gonna fill everything to Dame and Giannis's direction. Can Kuzma be that third guy that can not only because here's what Chris's real value: being an elite shooter, yes, but he was also an underrated playmaker. He was very good passer.
Correct.
And we just lost that. I don't think Kuzma can replicate that. He can do. He pretty much brings a completely different dimension as to what Chris Middleton brings. Athleticism. I think he can finish around the rim better. But I don't really need that. I don't need that from him. I already have, Dame that can finish around the rim just fine. Giannis is one of the best rim finishers in the game. At times when he needs to, Brook can still, finish around the rim. I need spacing. And Kyle Kuzma doesn't provide that. And we just took out the playmaking that completely, helped unlock our offense.
Look, I echo a lot of your thoughts. I'll make it simple, just from my vantage point. I'm not talking about finances. I'm just talking about the basketball player. I don't think the current version of Kyle Kuzma is better than the current version of Chris Middleton. And Chris Middleton isn't what Chris Middleton was prior to the injuries, but I think he's a better player than Kyle Kuzma still.
Yeah, then so to sum it up, Horst is an idiot. He just kind of screwed up this whole thing, and I wouldn't blame Giannis if he wanted to leave after this all blows up at the end. I hope I'm wrong. I'll apologize to John Horst if we win a title. I will get on this show and I'll apologize. But I don't think I'm in any danger of apologizing, and that's the problem.
I love those words. You know what? Let's make it let's be consistent. If the Mavericks win a title in the next couple of years, I'm going to apologize to Nico Harrison.
Yeah,
I'm putting it out there.
I'll apologize to both. If the Bucks win this year and
I'm not worried.
They win a title with AD. Yeah, I'll apologize to both of them.
Yeah, I'm not worried about having to apologize because it ain't gonna happen. But if it should happen by some miracle, yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, I think we tried to move Portis, but I don't think there was any value for Portis. Was kind of the problem, or the market just wasn't there for him. But
you still couldn't get rid of your buddy either, could you?
No. Yeah, can you imagine how much worse this will look if Luka wins a ring next year?
I got news flash for you. Go look at the Lakers roster. Look at the Mavs roster. They're not win. I'm not saying the Lakers are winning a title, but the Mavs ain't winning no title.
If the Mavs win, Nico gets a Thanksgiving float in the Macy's parade. That's fair.
He does, and if they lose, he's gonna get a foot to the rear in the Macy's parade. Look, I just don't think you can win in today's NBA if you don't have multiple shot creators on your team, and they don't have them.
So at this time, why don't we go into the rest of the trades from the trade deadline?
Sure.
We won't spend too much time on the Luka trade because we kind of already agreed that they're idiots for doing it. And we won't spend too much time on the Chris Middleton trade because I just went 5 minutes on the Chris Middleton trade.
I loved it.
And we'll kind of touch over the small trades. The real first small trade that happened. What's poppin', Gene? What are the Hawks doing? Oh, we'll get to them. They're being idiots.
They're getting ready to. They're doing Hawks things. That's what they're doing.
Ethical tanking because they don't even have their first for this year. That's the funny part. Jimmy Butler was the second worst trade. I think they're actually no. I disagree, Alex, and I will get to that trade. There's a trade I think is actually worse than the Jimmy one.
I think the De'Aaron Fox trade is bad. Not for the Spurs. Not for the Spurs.
So, like the first trade that happened, Mo, Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills for Mo Bamba, PJ Tucker, who was actually part of a different trade. 2023 second cast considerations that just happened. So why don't we get to the next trade that happened? De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin to the Kings for Zach LaVine, City Cisco, who was later moved for Jonas Valanciunas. And the picks that were given up, 2025 Hornets first, the 2027 Spurs, 2031 Timberwolves, 2025 second round Bulls pick, 2028 Nuggets pick, and another 2028 Bulls pick. And the Bulls got Collins, Huerter, Trey Jones, and the 2025 first round pick from the Spurs. In all reality, this is so funny because it was actually the Bulls received their own pick back.
Yes.
So let me tell you why they gave up nothing, because I want to explain this in a little more detail. With these draft picks, you might look at that 2025 Hornets roster pick and go, oh, they got a lottery pick? That's so good. Until you realize that's lottery protected. So if the Hornets somehow get out of the lottery, then they send that pick to the Kings. That's not going to happen. So what they actually did was gave them pretty much 2 seconds, because as long as they're in the lottery, that pick converts into 2 seconds.
Right.
So, with the Kings' perspective, they got 2 firsts in 5 seconds. From the Bulls' perspective, this is absolutely hilarious too. They, made a big fuss about getting their own first back, which was also lottery protected. And the Spurs are like, oh, okay, you guys are going to be in the lottery anyway. So these picks are the first ones I kind of wanted to touch on, because this is a big reason why I think the Spurs made off like bandits.
Yes, they did.
There's only one pick in here that has value, that 2031 Timberwolves pick. And that's hinging on them not re-signing Anthony Edwards.
Right.
So if Anthony Edwards is still in there in 2031, then the Spurs just pretty much gave up a whole lot of late round picks and second round picks. So terrific move, in my opinion, by San Antonio.
Done perfectly. They didn't give up any of their young core, any of their talent. Castle is still there. Devin Vassell is still there. Keldon Johnson is still there. Chris Paul, the vet's still there. And you added a closer and a running mate to Wemby in De'Aaron Fox. I'm not saying the Spurs make the playoffs this year, but I think they might make the play-in. They've got to push. And whatever happens this year, they're going to be a scary team when they bring this core back whole next season.
And I think what makes it scary too is so far the development of Stephon Castle. I think that he can develop into something very good. I don't think he'll ever be a superstar, Mo. I don't even know if he'll necessarily be I think he could develop into a fringe all-star. I think his high end, he could develop into a Drew Holiday caliber player, which would be terrific.
I love it. I love that comparison.
He's got to upgrade his ball handling, and he's got to work on his shooting by a lot. But the defense is there. I think his ball handling's already pretty good. And if he can figure out, his shooting, how to shoot a little better off the dribble, I think the sky's the limit. I think he could become that, the third best player on the Spurs.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. As he continues to develop, I can see him being the third option behind Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. I just think that they have such a great young core, and they didn't give up a lot. The Spurs they're set up so great for the future. Outside of the Lakers fleecing the Mavericks, this to me is the best. This is the best trade of the trade deadline.
Yeah, and then for the Kings, I'm just going to rename them real quick, the Sacramento Bulls, because they decided to reunite LaVine and DeRozan.
Right, let's do it again.
Yeah, they definitely got worse. This team's not going to be good. They'll be good enough to still make the play-in, but I think they significantly lowered their ceiling, and they're just kind of playoff fodder. I could see them making the playoffs, Mo, but they're going to get dog-walked in the first round.
If they make the playoffs, right? I mean,
Right.
because Levine and DeRozan, both natural scorers, both don't defend. Sabonis, incredible double guy, but he doesn't defend. I I don't look. I don't get it, but if you know the history of the Sacramento Kings, this is kind of such a Kings trade. It doesn't shock me at all. This is one of those trades where three teams were involved, and for whatever reason, the only team that came out smelling like roses was the Spurs. And this is not a knock in terms of the talent of Levine and DeRozan. I just don't understand the move because you didn't get younger. You I don't know what direction the Kings are going in. DeMar's going to be 35 next year. Levine's going to be 29 or 30. I guess they were like, we got to get something, and they went out and got something. But if you're a Sacramento Kings fan, you don't have a lot to cheer about.
And if you want to know how bad their defense is going to be already, the Orlando Magic have been on a real cold streak, and they've been struggling to crack 100 like all month. They've just gone real cold. It's been a rough month for them. They scored 103 as soon as they faced the Kings. This is a team that was like scoring like 101, 103. Like this team was struggling to score. But the Kings' defenses are kind of already so putrid that the Magic were just like, yep, 103. It's really sad. And, trading away like even like City Cisco, I get it. There's not a high chance he could have, been something, but also he could have been something. That is an unknown you could have developed. Instead, you gave him away for Jonas Valanciunas, who is almost the exact opposite of what you need.
Explain to me this. You have Sabonis, who's a very talented offensive center, but he didn't give you much defensively. And you bring in Valanciunas as his backup. And if anybody's ever seen Jonas is a slow, plodding big man. Who gives you nothing defensively. It's not like Jonas is a plus defender. He's not. I don't know how Jonas makes you better. I don't get it. I feel like they actually went out and got Valanciunas just to make sure the Lakers didn't get him. And that's fine, but show me how that makes you better.
It's funny because I've heard before they, went out and did the Mark Williams trade, I heard rumors like the Lakers are going to get Jonas. I'm like, that sounds terrible.
Why? I've heard that rumor too. I'm like, why?
Luka pairs best with like an athletic, rolling, rim running big man, and LeBron does well with them too. Jonas is the exact opposite of that and doesn't give you any rim protection. So, like,
none.
What are you doing? Like, there are like the three names I hated immediately as soon as they were announced, or when people were trying to speculate before the trade. They're going to trade for Brook. Okay, right. He'll give you a good backstop, but once again, offensively, he doesn't fit. They're going to trade for Vooch. Okay, take what I just said about like Jonas and just copy and paste to Vooch. So that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So I genuinely, and I think your only argument on why that's a good trade is, well, you can get rid of the Alex Len minutes. If you're playing Alex Len in the playoffs, you're done. I agree with that. But does Jonas Valanciunas really elevate your ceiling at all? No. If you're playing Jonas Valanciunas big minutes in the big 2025, you're also done. It's over. Let it go, dog.
Brett, I don't understand some of these moves. The other trade, I guess, is one of the bigger trades. Brandon Ingram to Toronto. What is that? What is that?
That's actually, so we can jump to that trade because that one's fun. Nobody wants to wait 15 seconds for Jonas to get up the floor and get ready to run the set.
Kyle knows what I'm talking about exactly.
Let me find because Alex said Jimmy Butler was the second worst trade, and the reason I disagreed is because the Brandon Ingram trade happened.
Yes,
that what to me was the absolute most hilarious trade in my opinion. I thought that was terrible. Listen. What did the Raptors do in 2019? They moved on from DeMar DeRozan. Because DeMar DeRozan, obviously you had the chance to get Kawhi Leonard, but big problem too is DeMar DeRozan he wasn't the guy for them anymore, and that's okay. He just wasn't
Right.
the guy to elevate to big games. You trade for DeMar DeRozan 2.0 6 years later in Brandon Ingram.
Yeah.
And I don't get it. And it's funny because you can go, well, it could just be a salary move. Like maybe they just dump salary. But you traded a first to get him and a second. That tells me that he's a building block. Except Brandon Ingram isn't the guy to elevate your team to the next level.
Brett, don't leave out. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Brandon Ingram's not coming back to Toronto. He's not coming back. Like they could have signed him to an extension right now, right? Like he's eligible. I'm sure they made the offer, they brought it up, and Brandon Ingram was probably like, why don't we let the season play out, right? You know what I'm saying? Like Brandon, even if you can bring him back, let me be clear on this. I'm not telling anybody who's listening that Brandon Ingram is not a talented player, but don't confuse a player's talent and their potential with what they actually are. If Brandon Ingram is your best player, you're not a good basketball team. If he's your second best player, you might be a borderline playoff team. The problem with Toronto is they don't have a number one option. I like Scotty Barnes. He's a kind of guy that can do a little bit of everything, but he's not a number one option. He's not a franchise player. I like RJ Barrett. But the best thing about RJ Barrett is if you're a title contender, he's probably your fourth option. They don't have a number one. They got a bunch of twos, maybe a couple of threes. Like, I don't understand the direction. I had a guy on the morning show argue with me, and by the way, in a weird way, his name was Brandon. It might have been Brandon Ingram. It might have been Ingram with a burner account. But he was arguing with me, and he was like, really? You don't think the Raptors are going to be good next season with Barnes, Barrett, and Ingram? And I was like, no, because it doesn't matter who the leading scorer is, right? Let's be clear on that. Your best player doesn't have to be your leading scorer. Those are two different things. But even if Scotty Barnes goes, I'll average 20 a game, Brandon Ingram can do 25, and RJ can get 18. That's not a good. I just don't see how that works. I don't understand that trade. It's one of the, and remember, he's an unrestricted free agent. You know, Brett, and I know, unless Usai Ujiri plans on giving Brandon Ingram a max, which would be insane. It'd be insane. Brandon Ingram is not coming back to the Raptors. And I heard, and the guy that was arguing with me said, well, Ujiri wouldn't make that move if he didn't know Ingram was going to resign. Have you seen any reports that Brandon Ingram has agreed to an extension? You have not, because Brandon Ingram doesn't want to be in Toronto.
But and also yes, he will make that move without the guarantee of an extension. He did it once. And
yes,
the first time it worked to perfection. His name was Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, but this is not a Kawhi move.
I know, and I know he's not on the same level of Kawhi Leonard, but the point kind of still stands that he will trade for a guy without the guarantee of an extension. That's the only part. I'm not trying to compare Ingram to 2019 Leonard. Two completely different stratosphere of players. But he will trade for a guy without the guarantee of an extension. And I think that's what happened here. And not only that, now you've backed yourself into a corner where he's just going to be like, yeah, I want the max or I'm gone. And now you're kind of forced to give it to him, or you just wasted a first-round pick for, 30 games of Brandon Ingram?
By the way, 30 games of Brandon Ingram. Correct me if I'm wrong. How many games have the Raptors won? 6. They're in the teens, right? Like 16 or 15. Like, where are they at record-wise? Because what does Usai Ujiri expect to happen in the second half of the season?
They're 16-35 and 6 games out of the play-in.
Right, but look, could they make the play-in? I don't want to say. I never want to say never, but is that the ultimate goal? If Brandon Ingram helps you get into the play-in, and then you go into the offseason and go, he helped us get into the play-in, we should give him a max, because that means that if we have him for a full season, we're probably going to be a 50-plus win team. Yeah, I don't think that's how that works. Usai Ujiri has done a lot of good things as a GM. In recent years, he's done some bad things. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
It happens. You don't always get it right. again, I'm not bagging on Brandon Ingram or Scotty Barnes. I happen to be fans of both of theirs, but I see them for what they are, not for what people want to project them to be. I think they're star players, but I think they're both complementary stars. I don't think either one of them are the type of players you can build around.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I was chuckling earlier at this comment: the Ingram and Barnes duo will starve families. Okay, that was good. That kind of caught me, Kyle. That was a good one.
Well done.
Sabonis needs to start distributing again and assist our way down. Yeah, I feel like he's going to get a lot of assists with this new look. If there's one good thing that the Kings did is, I think they're a much better 3-point shooting team. Granted, that's not going to lead to wins for them, but they did upgrade the 3-point shooting, so I think that actually will go up. Let's see, Raptors are new to the Pistons every year. They will be better next year. At least with the Pistons, they bottomed out and had a plan. The Raptors are every year it's oh, we're in the play-in. Oh, we're in the play-in again. Hey, if we pay Jakob Poeltl, maybe we'll be out of the play-in.
That's a good point.
Pay mid guys and get mid results. And I have no problem, like I said, with Scotty Barnes, Quentin Grimes, Quickly.
They're all good players. They're all good players.
The problem is they're good players. They're fine players.
Right.
You don't have the guy to push you to the next level. And
that's all I said.
Ingram isn't gonna all of a sudden take a superstar leap. We know who he is. So unless you plan on signing him and then packaging some of these other guys for an actual superstar, and even then that doesn't sound great because I also don't think Brandon Ingram's a good number 2 option either. This whole thing just seems like a mess.
That's all I'm saying. If you took them all just on an individual level, and if I were the Lakers and I had the cap space and I could make a move, would I feel good about adding Scotty Barnes to LeBron James and Luka? Absolutely. That would be the perimeter defender that they're talking about, who can also drop 18 or 20 a night offensively. But that would be Scotty Barnes in the role that I think that he's meant to be. If you're talking about being a title contender, he might be one of your 3 best players, but he's your 3rd option offensively. Brandon Ingram on a title, I'm not talking about playoff contender, but on a title contender, he's a 3rd option on a title contender. Emmanuel Quickly on a title contender is a 6th man. RJ Barrett on a title contender is the 4th option. All these guys you pointed out, they're fine. They're really good players. None of them are going to ever be superstars. None of them are the kind of players you can build a franchise around. That's not me killing them. That's me pointing out what they actually are.
No, I completely agree. And, it already got mentioned in the chat, so why don't we get there too? Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Butler got traded to the Warriors and then immediately... So how it works is Jimmy Butler has a player option at the end of the year. He declined that, and instead the Warriors gave him that 2-year, $121 million contract that he was after. I actually thought the trade itself was fine because, the trade and extension, I kind of just separated them. But I guess it was kind of part of the trade. But in all reality, giving up Wiggins, Anderson, they didn't really give up much to really get Jimmy Butler. They kept guys like Kuminga, Moody, and all your young talent.
All the young guys.
In that regard, I think they did very well. I do think that this extension is going to age awfully. Paying $60 million to, 57-year-old Jimmy Butler. Kidding, I think he'll be 37, but I don't think that goes well. I understand the vision, and I commend them for trying to go all in, during the step years here. And the fact you're able to give up, next to nothing to do it, great. But I also think that you probably should have traded Kuminga because now you have Steph making big money. You paying Dre. Jimmy Butler's about to be on a $60 million a year contract. Where's this Kuminga money coming from?
Because he isn't he already extension eligible? I think he's already
yeah,
and they never offered it to him. So you're going to let him get to free agency. Is he a restricted free agent this coming season, or is he? Because if he's unrestricted, if I'm Kaminga and I feel disrespected, I'll bounce.
Let's see.
He might be restricted.
I think it's restricted, but even then, if I were him, like, yeah, so he's a restricted free agent after this year. And I don't think there's money to pay him. So you kept him. It's almost like they still want to keep trying this 2-timeline strategy. But it's not going to work. This is a guy that, he's talented, but he also wants to be the guy. He wants his own team. He was at his most happy when he could be the guy. Or at least, even if not the guy, he wants to be an important guy. Somebody with a bigger role than being the third fiddle behind Steph. Steph, Jimmy, and then Kuminga. And even then, they randomly like to start giving Pods reps and a lot of these other guys. So he's pretty much splitting reps with a lot of different guys. I don't think he's happy about that. And I think they should have just traded him this offseason or this deadline to get max value out of him because, yes, it would have been the lure of diminishing returns. You probably should have just traded him last offseason. But at least you can still get a bit better haul than what you're going to get out of a sign and trade this coming season. So I think they messed up not trading Kuminga. I think the Butler extension, it was necessary. Don't think his age is well, but my big beef is I think you should just send out Kuminga.
I'm in agreement. I don't have a problem with the Butler signing because this is Joe Lacob and their management taking one more big swing at trying to be, trying to take one more swing, Brett, at going on a run in the Steph Curry era. I respect that. I get that. We always talk about dynasty come to an end. They're going to take a big swing with Jimmy, and they have Trace Jackson Davis, Moses Moody is there. You've mentioned Pods, Kuminga's there. All their young guys are still there. Don't forget they have Buddy Hield as a floor spacer. You've got Gary Payton III as a defender. Like, the Warriors potentially could go on a run. I don't think they're going to go on a deep playoff run, but with Jimmy, because we know playoff Jimmy is a real thing, I'll give the Warriors a puncher's chance to upset somebody in the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, for the Heat, they didn't really get that much back. Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, PJ Tucker, who was rerouted to Toronto,
right,
and a protected first-round pick. So, and by the way, Kyle said this earlier, and this was the funniest thing ever. Does Utah have like 30 guys on the roster? How many deals did they latch onto? Because they jumped into this one, they jumped into the the Luka trade. It just seemed like every time somebody needed like a team to dump players on, Utah's like, oh, did I hear picks? And they just got a lot of assets for pretty much nothing. So I'll commend them. I'll commend them for that.
I think the Jazz, they have a team full of guys that are going to be expiring contract. Like you can tell they're looking to take the assets they've acquired and do what they've been doing, trying to build through the draft. They've made some really good picks in recent years. I still don't think they've drafted their next franchise player, but you never know. You never know.
And they're I think that was pretty much all the blockbuster ones. Obviously, we already talked about the Luka and Chris Middleton trade earlier. But there is another trade, Mo, that I really love. There's actually a couple in here that I love. So I did love, like I said, the one part of the Bucks trade I will say is Jericho Sims. I did like getting him. I think he gives us an athletic big man.
He's got hops
that we desperately needed. And he showed some flashes in low minutes. So we'll see if that translates into bigger minutes. But I do like that. But the actual trade I want to do with the centerpiece, too bad Cottrell isn't in the chat tonight because I want to shout out his Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, yeah.
DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah. Absolute home run.
Obviously, this trade doesn't, come without risks with DeAndre Hunter's injury history. But I also don't think they gave up enough to really worry about that. They were able to just get a guy who's going to be in the running and could very well win Sixth Man of the Year, 18 a game, willing to come off the bench. And all it took was Karis Liver, Gorgeous Niang, and like three seconds and 2 pick swaps. Like, to me, that is absolutely worth it, and I think that's fantastic for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Look, I think the Cavaliers have been terrific all year long, but I think this move, I think they're legitimate title contenders right now because don't forget, in Hunter, you have a guy that can guard multiple positions. He's the size of Jason Tatum. He's a legit 6'9" and long and athletic and has range and can defend at a high level. And then put that with Mobley and Evan Mobley. I like what Cleveland did acquiring him because you know that in a closing lineup, he's going to be part of that closing lineup. The Cleveland didn't have the biggest splash move, but I think they had a move that's it will impact the Eastern Conference. Like, barring an injury, I don't know if anybody can stop Cleveland from making it to the conference finals.
Yeah, and no, that's fair enough. I'm really high on Cleveland, too, after this trade deadline. I thought they knocked it out of the park. Of course, the other trade that I like, we touched on it earlier, but, why don't we talk about it in full? Your Lakers got Mark Williams, and it took a 2030 pick swap, 2031 unprotected first, Cam Reddish, and Dalton Connect. Now, it's funny because I've seen some Lakers fans kind of like, oh, why did they have to get rid of Dalton? Well, as long as you're not negotiating with, Nico, you actually have to, give up something normally to get value back.
Right.
And Dalton Connect, young, has a lot of potential, but the reality is Mark Williams fits better with the kind of player that Luka and LeBron are. But more importantly, Luka, because this is Luka's team now. So you got to start filling the roster out with Luka, guys. And Mark Williams is a great example. If you don't know how insane Mark Williams is, he has the tallest standing reach in the NBA, even taller than Wemby's. He's got an insane lob radius. He's insanely athletic.
Yes.
And that 2031 unprotected first, that was valuable before. Like on Friday, I'd have told you that was maybe the most valuable thing ever because, LeBron ages out, Lakers are toast. With Luka, as long as you're able to re-sign him, that 2031 first, that's next to nothing.
Right.
So overall, I obviously thought they had this one. They actually ironically gave up more than they did in the Luka trade, but I actually like what they did here.
Right. I'm with you. They gave up more in some ways. Here's what I'll say, though. I think it's a great move because if you've watched any of Charlotte's games, if you could go to YouTube if you've never heard of Mark Williams, he's a freakishly long and athletic big. He's I think he's 22, 23 years old. He's exactly what Luka needs in terms of a lob threat. And defensively, he's still learning rotations, but he has terrific defensive instincts, so he gives you a shot blocker as well. So it's a great fit for LeBron and Luka, obviously. I was going to ask you this, and we'll probably talk about this more on the next show. What did you think about the Grizzlies moving on from Marcus Smart? Obviously, that was more about salary more than anything. And I told you this during the season because Scottie Pippen Jr. had played so well, he'd made Marcus Smart expendable. And sure enough, Marcus Smart got moved. I'm asking you this because I think we can talk about the buyout market. I don't think the Wizards hold on to Marcus Smart. And I would think that your team would be interested in a guy like Marcus Smart. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would take Marcus Smart. I was actually fine with the Grizzlies dumping Smart. It's clear he didn't really fit there anymore. A lot of the younger guys had passed him. So, and, they also got 2 second-round picks. So that's assets you can use in future trades. When it comes to Marcus Smart, I do think he's going to buy him out from what I've heard. I know they're going to keep Chris Middleton till at least, into the offseason. But if they buy out Smart as a Bucks fan, I would definitely be interested.
Yeah,
I,
I think a lot of contenders would. I think the Bucks. Yeah, look, he can still play at a high level, high basketball IQ. He's a streaky shooter at best. Let's both be honest on that. But you don't when you sign Marcus Smart, you're not signing him for his scoring ability. You're signing him for all the intangibles.
yeah, absolutely. And I still think he could be a fine player. He's still a good player. He's just oft injured, but he's somebody I would definitely take a chance on in the buyout market if we could get our
Sure.
hands on him.
Yeah, I'm with you 100. I tell you what, he might be often injured, still better than Kyle Kuzma.
Don't get me started.
My bad, partner.
No, you're all good. You're
I
all
don't want you
good.
to go there again. Yeah, I got you.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fair. Let me put it this way: the first Bucks game will be interesting to watch. The Clippers obtained Bogdanovich from the Atlanta Hawks for
Yeah.
Terrence Mann, Bose Highland in 3 seconds.
And I like Bogey. I like Bogey a lot.
It's funny, Mo, because this felt like a whole lot of nothing, and I think the Hawks might have gotten more value with the 3 seconds. I like Bogey, but he's shown like clear signs of decline this year. His stuff off the dribble that made him a 6-man of the year candidate hasn't really been there as much as he has in years past. I think the Clippers may have just traded 3 seconds really for a player that sounds good in theory, like in name value, but I don't know how effective he is. And maybe he's just in Atlanta and not motivated, so that he very well could resurge on the Clippers.
Right.
But like looking at it, looking how he played the first half of the year, to me, like even 3 seconds for Bogey could almost look like an overpay in the end, unless he really turns it around quick.
Look, you make a fair point. I look at Bogdanovich as a guy who maybe it was just time for a change of scenery. He wasn't nearly as vital a part of the Hawks rotation that he had been in the past. And I know he's an older now. I want to say Bogdanovich is 30, 31-ish. So a veteran team like the Clippers, because obviously the Clippers are not a young team, they're doing their best to try to add more scoring to their roster. So we'll see if a change of scenery is beneficial to him. I'm always intrigued by the NBA. I know you are, but all these insane moves has just made us both think, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to be watching more Dallas Maverick games, right? All of a sudden, you know what I mean? All of a sudden I'm going to be paying a little bit closer attention to, you know what I mean? Like that's what these moves have done. I'm going to be looking at each franchise that made a significant move, and I want to see the impact that these players have on one another. And I also think no GM is going to sleep on the buyout market because you can always find a solid veteran in the buyout market.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely talk about the buyout market next week for sure. I know another move that kind of got a lot of negative backlash was actually, ironically, the Mavs again. They traded for Caleb Martin and then sent out Quentin Grimes in the second.
What was that? Why?
Like
Why?
it's weird because to me, I think the only reason like you send down Quentin Grimes is you have to pay him this offseason. And if you want to like give up Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin because he's under contract for the next 3 years,
that's exactly why they did it.
Perfect. Did you have to give up a second round pick to do it?
I didn't understand that.
I think any decent negotiator could have, gotten around giving up a second. I thought that was wild because as much as you'd have to pay him, I think Quentin Grimes is clearly the superior player with a higher upside than Caleb Martin. And I don't think you have to pay Quentin Grimes that much. Like, you gained a second. And I think if I had to guess, like, ballpark Quentin Grimes, what he's going to make on the open market, like 12 mil a year, 13 mil a year, somewhere in that area. I'm max value, maybe somebody goes 4 years, 60, so like 15 a year. I don't think that paying him would have been the biggest deal in the world. And if you didn't want to pay him, fine, but why are you giving up the second?
Yeah, I didn't get that. Again, I don't know. I don't know what Harrison is doing. Here's my thing. I know why the Sixers did it. They wanted to save money. That's why they got rid of Martin. But the Mavs, if you look at the two players, their skill sets are very similar, except Grimes is almost a full 5 years younger, more athletic, and is actually a better shooter from three. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. But again, I'm not Nico Harrison. He's a mad genius. He knows more than you or I. So clearly, he's thinking Caleb Martin is going to be part of their next championship team. I got it. This is actually one of the rare moves where Daryl Morey got a win. I think it's a great move for Daryl Morey.
I think so too. You got to look at Quentin Grimes, and worst case scenario, if he walks, you still got a second out of it.
Right.
And
right.
I still found it funny too that the other Martin got traded. Cody Martin, not Caleb. Cody went to Phoenix.
Right.
And the Hornets receive Yusuf Nurkic and a first. That's going to be hilarious to watch. I wouldn't be shocked if the Hornets just straight up bought out Nurk, or just
they don't want him,
or just sent him home.
Right.
Like, I thought that trade was hilarious. This is a Hornets team that I thought had a lot of potential before the year started, and it just hasn't gone that way at all.
They've had a lot of injuries too, though.
Yeah, they've gotten hammered by injuries. Guys like Brandon Miller, out for the rest of the year, and it's really unfortunate. I do like the fact that they got, a first rounder. Granted, I don't think it'll be valuable as long as Devin Booker and company are still there. However, this comes back to if they pissed off Kevin Durant, if he leaves because they want to trade, you might, that might be the factor that pushes Booker out the door. So I think there's a real chance I'm not going to say a high chance, but I think there's a chance that 2026 first could be a lot more valuable than people are going to give it credit for.
Partner, you're talking about something that more people should talk about. Kevin Durant, we know as great as he is, he's ultra sensitive. He is. You were trying to move me? You know what I mean? Like, you were trying to move me behind I thought I was one of your cornerstones. Like, I get it. He can, you can go, we're professionals. It's part of the business. There's no way he's going to wash it off as Bradley Beal doesn't care because he's got a no trade clause. He's involved in every potential trade, but nobody's taking him because nobody wants that contract. But Kevin Durant, you're right. If he feels a certain way, I think that trickles down to Devin Booker too. And I just think that James Jones and company, they've mishandled this trade deadline. And going forward, what are the Suns are going to look like going forward, Brett, in terms of their continuity and their commitment to trying to win going forward?
Hey, I've seen this story before. Is this Bradley Beal on a team that's lacking talent? We're going to get 30 a game Bradley Beal again.
Oh,
just a pure volume scoring if Beal and Durant leave. It's going to be the funniest thing ever because then, somebody might give him a year or two with no expectations and no pressure. I promise you, Beal starts balling out again because I don't think he forgot how to play basketball. I just don't think this was the right role for him. But you give him the number one scoring roles again with the volume that he wants, he's going to get back into like the mid-20s a game. I wouldn't doubt that.
Oh, he's going to put up buckets.
I just would be curious then to see like if some team would sucker themselves into thinking, hey, maybe he's a changed man now, and then we start this process all over again.
Oh, I can see that happening. I'd be willing to bet that could happen. He puts up numbers, you're impressed, and by the way, there's no question Bradley Beal has talent. It's just a matter of the role that you have in your franchise. But somebody could be gotten, and next thing you know, Bradley Beal's found his way into another big contract just when I thought this one would be his last. I don't like the way James Jones and company handled this. And maybe he's done the tough things and already had talks with Durant. Maybe he's told Durant, hey, we were never going to move you. Like, people called us and asked us about you, but we were never going to move you. And maybe that's the case, and they just move on from it.
No, absolutely. If you want, all the trades that happen on the trade deadline, by the way, if you go to the And One Podcast Facebook page, I have them all up there. Every single trade, everything major from Luka to even like Jaden Springer getting traded for 2 heavily protected seconds. Like, It's all there for you if you need to reference it. So, is there any other trades or anything you wanted to talk about, Mo, before we get up on out of here?
Nah, we covered it all, partner. Not to mention, guys, look, and one, we're doing our thing. Join us again next Thursday. But don't forget, this is Brett and I. We're getting ready to do a double-double. We're coming back tomorrow, right? We're coming back Friday, right? We're coming back doing our thing. So we're probably going to talk some more hoops for sure. Look, I just appreciate everybody for joining us, for tuning in to And One at Wire to Wire Network. We've got, you know what? I think at Wire to Wire, we've got a monopoly on the geniuses. We've got the NFL genius and Gene Wolzak. I've got my partner, the NBA phenom himself, Brett Gard the 3. And then you've got Cottrell and Shally and Alex, the masters of college football. So at Wire to Wire, we're beast. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you check out all the great content we have at Wire to Wire.
Absolutely. And before I sign off for the night, the NFL Hall of Fame class was just announced. Antonio Gates, Jared Allen, looks like Sterling Sharp, and Eric Allen. Okay. Looks like, congratulations to everybody who just made the NFL Hall of Fame. And there's going to be some there's more awards getting announced right now. But we'll talk more Hall of Fame and NFL awards and NBA tomorrow at 8 a.m. on the morning show. So don't miss it. And, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your night.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the And One podcast. If you like our content, you can find more on the Wire to Wire Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Want more And One? Find it on Wire to Wire. Like and share our Facebook page, and join the And One Discord. Grab the link to join from our Facebook. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.